Fox News alert, we've got breaking news out of Israel. First, this headline. Israel, we're getting this tape in. Hold on a second. We've got this tape coming in as we get a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. He is commenting on this dust-up we saw days ago involving this flotilla. As we're awaiting the statement from Benjamin Netanyahu, we're getting a new tape in of the incident, a different angle. Israel deported hundreds of activists today who were detained during this raid you're watching here. It was a raid on a group of flotilla ships off the Gaza coast. Here's what happened. These 6 ships were coming in. They were trying to break the Israel blockade and an Egyptian blockade, which tries to prevent these ships from going to Gaza, an area controlled by Hamas, an organization labeled as terrorist by our own State Department. So these ships were trying to bring aid in through the blockade. Israel said, don't do it, otherwise you're going to have to deal with us. Nonetheless, they did it. 5 ships were boarded without incident. The 6th resulted in 9 people being killed. And now there's been condemnation across the globe of Israel for defending its blockade. Israel says, look, we warned them. As our soldiers boarded this 6th ship, you could see that they were being attacked with knives and metal rods. What were we to do? Still, many saying that Israel overreacted in terms of the violence in response to the attacks on those soldiers. Now, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is speaking to the issue. He was supposed to meet, you recall, with President Obama at the White House yesterday. That got canceled because he needed to deal with this crisis. I mean, the UN is involved on this now. France and Spain were quick to condemn Israel. President Obama being more reserved, something for which conservatives and liberals alike have praised him to some extent. And now we get this new tape of the incident, not exactly sure what it's showing. We're trying to get a better vantage point or get some editorial. Get an editorial on this. All right, and now what we're hearing, this is the headline, according to the wires, according to Reuters, that Prime Minister Netanyahu is accusing international critics of hypocrisy, and he defended Israel's actions on Monday as they boarded this ship. Keep in mind, it was a Turkish ship. The Turks said, look, you know, we're trying to provide aid to people in Gaza who are suffering because of this blockade. Israel said these ships don't always provide aid. Sometimes they bring weapons, and therefore pull the ship over into an Israeli port. If you've got aid, we'll deliver it. No problem. Unfortunately, those on board this Turkish ship did not listen, and they refused to accept that offer. They plowed through anyway, and you saw what happened as a result. Now, Netanyahu defending Israel's actions, saying the international critics are hypocrites, and said that he would continue to blockade this area, and embargo would turn this into a base for Iranian missiles that would threaten both Israel and Europe. So Netanyahu coming out, not apologizing, standing by the actions of the Israeli military. There have been criticisms of the military for not anticipating that this thing could get violent, knowing what types of people could potentially be on board these ships. I mean, some, as I say, linked to Hamas. Others say that there were links to Al-Qaeda, and on it goes. But nonetheless, the Israeli Prime Minister standing by his military's actions. And now there are a lot of eyes on the White House, wondering how exactly President Obama is going to deal with this. Should he stand firmly behind our ally, Israel, or should he join some of our European friends in condemning Israel's actions? President Obama's already been criticized for not being for not reaching out more of a hand to Israel, for not being tighter, if you will, with Benjamin Netanyahu. And now he's facing a bit of a PR issue himself, and how he handles this, both with the eyes of the international community on him and with the eyes of Israel, in particular, on him and on the United States. We're trying to get Rena Ninan. We're trying to get Connor Powell, I'm told. He's live, coming to us from Jerusalem with the latest on what we're hearing from the Israeli Prime Minister. Connor, what do we know?
Well, Megan, as you said, Prime Minister Netanyahu offered a very strong defense of the Israeli commandos' actions and the overall blockade of Gaza, and basically challenged other international leaders, saying, what would you do in this position? I mean, they've defended the Gaza blockade, essentially saying that they can't allow weapons into Gaza because that then also threatens Israeli security. And he said specifically that if this blockade is broken, that there will be an Iranian port in the city of Gaza, threatening not only Israel but also the greater Middle East area. But he focused specifically on maintaining this blockade and saying they would do this again and they will continue to defend this, Megan.
Is it a full-blown press conference that's taking place right now, Connor? What exactly is happening with the Prime Minister?
This was a very short statement, a brief statement here on TV, but it was from the Prime Minister's office, I'm told, and it was just a quick statement, only about 5 or so, 10 minutes. I don't even think he offered any comments in English. It was directly squared to the Israeli public here, although they might also offer some comments in English later in a few minutes as well, Megan.
All right, Connor Powell, thank you so much. And joining me here on set, listen, I want to tell you right here, we're waiting because we understand that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to come back out to this microphone and further comment. We expect this one to be in English, and so we will hear what he has to say. But so far, a very firm defense of Israel, not apologetic from the sound of it. Keep in mind, 9 people lost their lives. But nonetheless, those Israeli soldiers were indeed under attack after they tried to board that ship. On set with me now is Monica Crowley. She's joining me in a moment to talk about another subject. But while you're here, Monica, the stakes on this are very high, not just for Israel, but for the United States.
Exactly right. Let's look at the context of this, Megan. When Hamas won those elections in the Gaza Strip, they took over Gaza and they essentially turned it into a mini terrorist state. Hamas is directly supported by Iran, as Hezbollah is. So the concern of the Israelis is not only are they shooting rockets over the border into Israel every single day, but if they were to loosen this blockade, which, by the way, is an international blockade.
Egypt's also there.
Yes, it's not just Israel doing this on their own. The Egyptians are also part of this blockade. It's supported by the West and by the United States. If they were to allow this blockade to just go away, you can imagine the shipment of arms and weapons and Iranian personnel and trained terrorists that would flow into Gaza and make the security situation, as dire as it is, even worse for Israel.
The criticism for Israel, among others, has been, now yesterday we had our own reporter there as they took the materials off that ship, and the reports were there were not weapons. It was not a ship, according to the reports, that had arms on board or was otherwise dangerous. The defense has been, how was Israel to know that in advance?
Right. And look, the Israelis have intercepted ships in the Persian Gulf. They've intercepted ships in the Mediterranean Sea before that have been loaded with Iranian-sent weapons. So the idea that they will know about what's on every single ship, they can't. That's why there's a blockade to stop ships. And in this particular case, the Israelis said, look, we can't take you at your word because the history is just too replete with violence and weaponry. So what we will do is divert this flotilla to the port city of Ashdod. We will board the ships, we'll inspect, and if everything passes muster, if there's no contraband and no weapons, we'll allow the shipment to go into Gaza. And they refused to do that. So again, this was a PR stunt on behalf of the Arab world, the Palestinians, and the Turks to make the Israelis look bad. The Israelis took the bait. They handled this very poorly. They didn't have the intelligence about, as you say, what was on these ships to begin with. But look, Israel is in an existential situation here. There's a threat against their very existence by the people in Hamas who refuse, those who are in the Gaza Strip refuse to recognize Israel's existence and are their sworn enemies for their destruction, backed up by the terrorist state in Iran. So given that situation, Israel has very little leeway here, Megan. They're talking about its very existence and its very survival.
And so what should President Obama do? Because, he's been criticized for being too quick to turn his back on Israel, for not having Israel's back in other situations, and he has made it his mission to reach out to the Muslim world in particular. And now we've seen condemnations by Turkey and others of Israel's behavior. Right. So what does the White House do now? Well,
so far the president, and as you know, I've been very critical of him on many, many issues, but I think so far on this he has handled it in the right way.